Although the constitutional monarchy comes into place in 1839 under the Declaration of Rights, or one might say in 1840 with the first constitution, it's really Kamehameha I, through many of his policies, that's already starting to separate out his absolute powers. Right? You have to understand that Kamehameha I comes from a line of ali'i in which the mo'i is the absolute ruler. What he says or what she says goes. Kamehameha is one of the first to start to separate or divide out some of his powers, right? And you can start to see that come into fruition when Kamehameha III, Kauikeuli, begins to develop the constitutional monarchy.
Kauikeuli sees the furthering of colonization in the Pacific. The Spanish are going to take the Marquesas. The French are going to take French Polynesia. The Germans are looking at Samoa. You know, all these places are being gobbled up, and he's not stupid. He knows Hawaii's next. Hawaii's strategically right between the United States, the west coast of the United States, and Japan. So there's no question Hawaii was coming to be taken. It would have been taken. The only way he can prevent that is to gain recognition as an equal from these other countries. Impossible, no way. They're a tiny little country in the middle of nowhere. How are they going to gain recognition from these other countries? It's never been done before by a non-European nation, but he's got to try. So he starts to build, with help and with guidance, a nation and a constitution and all these things that will be recognized. So 30 years ago, the narrative was the white man came, imposed his form of government on Hawaii, and then took over. Well, Kamana Beamer and others in the field have shown, no, this was purposeful. Again, Hawaii would have been a foreign nation by the 1850s if this hadn't happened. But he understands what he needs to do. He turns his nation into a constitutional monarchy to save it.
Hawaii was looking around the Pacific and seeing that other countries were being colonized. So he sent Ambassador Timoteo Halilio, Secretary William Richards, and then Assistant Ambassador George Simpson.
They meet with the representatives from France and from England. And on November 28th, 1843, they gain recognition from England and France as a sovereign and independent nation. And that's huge. That became a national holiday throughout the kingdom. But that day, La Ku'okoa, Independence Day, November 28th, 1843, the France and England signed a declaration recognizing Hawaii as an independent sovereign co-equal. So every power that England had, every right that France had, America had, Hawaii now had. And it was the first non-European nation in the world to achieve that. No other nation in Oceania did. You know, you think about nations, you think about Japan. Japan gained international recognition in 1893. Hawaii was 50 years prior to that. So it was really an incredible achievement, and it puts Hawaii at that table of nations as an equal.
Now in the case of Hawaii, it's very interesting. Hawaii was the first non-Western state to be recognized by the world community, as we said before, in 1843. Once you're so recognized, you cannot be colonized anymore.
By the 1890s, the Hawaiian Kingdom has over 100 embassies and legations throughout the world. It has peace treaties, right? It has a treaty of neutrality. It has friendship and commerce treaties with literally every other single country in the world. Citizenship in the Hawaiian Kingdom was never based on blood quantum, or was never based around any notions of race, right? In contrast, in the 1840s in the United States, in order to acquire American citizenship, at that time you had to be a white male. And that prerequisite of being white actually stays within the regulations of U.S. citizenship for almost another 100 years, right? Racially inclusive citizenship laws in Hawaii are being passed 120 years before the American Civil Rights Movement takes place in the 1970s, right? Are a number of examples of former slaves escaping the grips of slavery in America, finding their way to the shores of Hawaii, naturalizing, right, becoming a Hawaiian subject, and being afforded all the rights and privileges therein, right? Mind you, these are former slaves coming from an American system that is based on ideologies of white supremacy.
The Hawaiian monarch, at a certain point, declares neutrality in the Crimean-Russian War. Hawaii as a nation, a co-sovereign equal, claiming neutrality in this Crimean-Russian war, forced the other nations of the world to start to say, well, what does that mean? What are neutrality laws internationally? And they hadn't been really developed that well. Keanu has written a great article about the development of neutrality laws around the world, and that was sparked by this claiming from the Hawaiian Kingdom. So the Hawaiian Kingdom kind of is at the forefront of developing international law on neutrality. You have, by the 1860s, mid-60s, Hawaii almost as a universally literate nation. And that's incredible. I mean, we know that literacy was probably well over 90%. That's written, by the missionaries, that's written by everyone saying it's a nearly universally literate nation. So somewhere around 90 to 95% literacy. At the same time in the US, the literacy rate was around 70%. In many countries, it was around 30%. The Kingdom of Hawaii had one of the most literate nations, was one of the most literate nations in the world. They produced one of the most prolific newspaper scenes. They had over 100 Hawaiian language newspapers published in the 19th century. We have 125,000 pages of thought and news in the newspapers. In 1861, there's a beautiful newspaper that's put out by Kanu Pepukuokoa, a new newspaper, and it's on January 1st, and they have a color Hawaiian flag on the front of the newspaper. It's in red, white, and blue. That was the first printing of a color flag in any newspaper anywhere in the world. That was 30 years before the use of color in a US newspaper. That was Hawaiians in the Kingdom of Hawaii doing that. 1870s, 1880s, you have Kalakaua setting many firsts, first monarch to circumnavigate the globe. You have him when he's in Paris. He hears about a demonstration of a new invention going on, a street-side demonstration. So he goes and he sees this demonstration, and it's the light bulb. It's Thomas Edison. And so he meets Edison. On his way back to Hawaii, he stops in New York City and meets with him at his offices and contracts to have electricity brought to Hawaii. And Iolani Palace is lit with electricity by Edison's folks long before the White House is. I mean, the US White House, the Buckingham Palace had electricity after Hawaii did at its State House. There's another kind of cute story about the fact that when electricity did go into the White House in the US, the president was scared of it and wouldn't use it. He thought it was magic.